Look at these 3 words written larger than the rest, with a special pride never written before or since. Tall words proudly saying, "We the people."
Hi folks, and welcome back to the Lex Rex Institute. At LRI, one of our goals has always been empowering citizens to hold their elected officials accountable. And the system that our founding fathers put in place simply can't function without informed participation in local elections. And local smaller government just doesn't work without you. All of you getting involved. Now, this isn't going to be one of those go vote campaigns. In fact, if you don't know anything about the ballot positions or the candidates, do you know what the second most civically responsible thing you could do is? Not voting. Think of it as doing the Republic a favor. Sort of like a Redditor resisting the urge to explain cryptocurrency to everyone at the dinner table, sometimes restraint is the true act of heroism. It's okay. Our republic's not going to crumble without you. We promise. And if you don't believe me, I'll explain in a minute. However, the most civically responsible thing that you could do is, of course, to watch our new YouTube series, How to Make Your Vote Count. I wanted to call it How to Avoid Electing a Maniac, but they told me that was too long. Anyway, that's why we're here today, to introduce to you a new series designed to make sense of the often overlooked offices that have a huge impact on your day-to-day lives. The purpose of this series is to explain what those lesser-known local offices are, things like water commissioner, judges, comptroller. What the heck's a comptroller? City council, county supervisors, school board members, and more. And, more importantly, how you should be voting for those people. Now, we're not going to be telling you the specific people to vote for, but what we will do is show you qualities to look for in a candidate and how to know who is qualified for which positions. But why should you care about any of this? Well, before I explain that, a quick word from our sponsor. I'm just kidding. Who the heck would sponsor this channel? Anyway, most of the services that you rely on daily, things like schools, policing, roads, and utilities, are handled by local government. And this isn't by accident. It's actually a design feature of the American system. Alexis de Tocqueville, a 19th century French political thinker, sort of a proto-sociologist, famously observed in his book Democracy in America that the strength of the United States lay in its decentralized governance, where citizens were deeply invested in local affairs. Yeah, I know, a French guy telling us what makes America great. Ironic, but he had a point. Anyway, de Tocqueville's analysis matters because he recognized early on how this local engagement preserved liberty and personal responsibility. The founders understood that concentrated power was inherently dangerous, which is why they ensured that most critical decisions that actually impacted our lives were kept as close to the people as possible. If we ignore our local elections, we risk not only ceding those important responsibilities, but importantly, ceding control to distant federal powers, leading to exactly the kind of centralization that our founders and Tocqueville both feared. We've already seen attempts to nationalize education, law enforcement, and countless other things, and the result is less autonomy for communities and more bureaucratic overreach. By not taking responsibility for our local governments, we enable these centralizing forces to advance, jeopardizing our individual liberties and the blessings of self-government that our forefathers intended us to preserve. Which is sort of a fancy way of saying that you'll end up paying for more useless stuff while they take away the things you actually care about. The decisions made at a local level have serious consequences, and they will absolutely change based on who's in charge of making them. Take sales taxes, for example. Elect the wrong city council and they could raise local sales tax to fund bloated government projects and pet initiatives, squeezing every dime out of the people who can least afford it. Or consider your local school board. Elect a majority with a radical agenda, and your kids could end up being taught about deviant sexual practices and gender ideologies instead of core subjects like reading and math. Apparently, balancing a checkbook isn't nearly as important as debating whether or not your imaginary pet is non-binary. Even seemingly obscure positions like comptroller can wreak havoc. A bad comptroller could mismanage public funds or funnel tax dollars into corrupt contracts, leaving a city broke while you're left footing the bill. Ever wonder why your city keeps tearing down historic buildings for cookie-cutter strip malls? Well, that's what happens when you elect officials who prioritize developers over preserving your town's character. Notice the proliferation of cannabis dispensaries? Well, you can thank your local officials for handing out conditional use permits like candy. Don't like the homeless on every street corner? Well, as much as we might want to blame Uncle Joe for that problem, again, blame falls on our local officials for that one too. Thinking of opening a lemonade stand? Well, you better make sure the zoning board doesn't consider lemons a controlled substance in your jurisdiction. And remember, local officials are not distant, untouchable figures. They live in your community, shop in the same stores, and their decisions directly impact your life. By staying engaged, you can hold them accountable, attend town hall meetings, and even have direct conversations about your concerns. Yeah, your kid's principal may not like you showing up when he's at the grocery store so that you can harangue him about your list of concerns, but you'll be doing your civic duty if you do it. Now, local elections affect much smaller groups of people, of course, but the power local officials have in our lives far exceeds that of the federal government. And remember, local officials aren't distant, untouchable figures. Their decisions directly impact you. By staying engaged, you can hold them accountable. This series is about informing our viewers of the underrated locally elected positions, why they exist, and most importantly, how to go about making informed decisions when it comes to your votes. Now, we often get messages that our votes don't really matter because the electoral math is so weird or antiquated or a bunch of other arguments that we'll debunk in another video. But what's the point of even voting anyway with all this stuff? Well, the truth is that elections for the President of the United States or the governor of your state often coincide with elections for dozens or even more other positions that, believe it or not, have a far greater chance of affecting your day-to-day life than the president does, and where your vote counts for more. Because instead of one vote among millions, it's one vote among thousands. Yes, even if they can't launch nuclear missiles. How often does the president really do that anyway? Well, thanks again to everyone for watching, and we look forward to our next video in this series. We'll see you next time. And remember, when in doubt, vote against the incumbent. Unless you're certain they're doing a good job, they're probably not. After all, if they were, why haven't the potholes been fixed yet? The deep state must be destroyed.